I'm going to start a batch of ice cream sandwiches. Number one son's birthday is coming up. We're going to send a batch of ice cream sandwiches. So we're going to cut some of them into smaller pieces and I'm going to leave some of them bigger. It's been asked before, do you have to cut them up? No, you could leave them big, but they're kind of messy to eat if you leave them whole. But I'm going to leave a few whole and we'll cut some of them up. So I'm going to use my sister's machine for this batch. I want to do some maintenance on my machine, but that's a separate story for a different time. So I'm going to get it started, double check the settings on this. We've got it for initial freeze for a -10, 2 hours extra freeze time. I'm going to actually bump that up with the ice cream to make sure that they're really, really solid. So I'm going to add 4 hours. I don't know if that's necessary for this machine. With my machine, I would probably do at least an 8-hour freeze, even with pre-frozen things, to make sure that the ice cream is really solid. And I might only do half the ice cream that I have, ice cream sandwiches, in case it doesn't do right in her machine. Not real sure. So it's got a dry temperature of 120 degrees, extra dry time of 12 hours. And we'll get it started. And I'll close the drain valve. And we'll get the ice cream sandwiches cut and unwrapped and the things that we're going to do with them, and then bring them over to her place in her machine and get them in a while. It'll be an hour or two. It's been a very long time since I've freeze-dried a batch. My last batch, it looks like, was October 21st, and now it's January 28th. I've got a couple of things that I've prepared and they're in the freezer waiting to be freeze-dried, but I haven't finished it yet. So, cutting some parchment paper for the trays, and we cut the rolls that we get at Costco on the chop saw, and then we just tape this ruler down to the bench to cut them to length to fit the trays. Parchment paper on your trays is absolutely not required, but to me it makes the cleanup a little bit easier. With some things we don't even wash the tray between batches if we're doing multiple batches of the same thing, because the parchment just keeps it nice and clean. It's easy to empty off the tray. You can even lift this parchment off and use it for pouring it into the bags sometime. Anyway, it's very, very inexpensive to do the parchment this way. And I'll link the video of how we cut them to width. And you could do a variation of this and actually make these longer and wider so that they go up the trays on all 4 sides. You'd have to cut out a little corner. That would be useful for some things. But because we pre-freeze almost everything before it goes on the trays, nothing generally sticks to the tray very much. And I'm just using this pattern on the tabletop to square up the piece of paper so that I know that I don't have it at a weird angle. And I've got a couple of marks on this bench or on this table that tells me where to tape this down. So let's move on. So you can see I have little felt pen marks on there. I'm going to try some different things with these. Let's see, these are Kroger brand ones. I have people to get them for me, so I never know what I'm going to get. I'm going to leave a couple of them whole, and I'm going to just go ahead and open the bag a little bit. Maybe I'll do 3 of them. Okay, so we'll do some of them in quarters. Okay, get that back in the freezer. Okay, those I'm going to just leave completely wrapped and see what happens. Let's just try this lengthwise. Okay, little pieces on this one. Okay, some more testing. These two weigh almost exactly the same, within 1/10 of 1 gram. So we can use those and weigh them and compare them to make sure that they're losing weight about the same. Okay, we'll get everything cleaned up and then we'll take the trays of the ice cream sandwiches over to my sister's and get them in the freeze dryer. I put the trays back in the freezer for now while I'm waiting. My sister's machine has been running for a while because I started it and then prepped the ice cream sandwiches and did a few other things before that. So it's been running for about 2.5 hours already. The chamber is -40 around the outside according to the thermometer we have touching it. And it's been quite cold for a while. It's showing only 20 degrees on the tray temperatures, which is unfortunate. The current way it's set up, it's actually turning on the heaters a little bit to keep those from getting too cold. I can understand why you might want that for some foods, but for ice cream, I want it really, really cold. So we're gonna have to watch that. And I forgot to put thermometers in any of the ice cream sandwiches, so I'll try to stick a thermometer or two in them before I put them in here so I can see what's happening in there as it's going through the process. I really like to get a lot colder than it is. So I'll bring them over now, get them weighed, and get them in. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put continue now. And we'll see how cold it gets before it actually starts. With my machine, I can just simply let it keep freezing until I see those thermometers in there get to -40. And that's a really good thing with ice cream. If you've ever had your ice cream foam up or blow up, it's usually because it's not cold enough in the center. And without having thermometers in the food and the ability to keep it freezing until you see that it's cold enough, you can't really tell. All this does is tell you what the temperature is at the bottom temperature probe on the bottom, or the temperature probe on the bottom of that tray. It doesn't tell you the temperature of the food, and it certainly doesn't tell you the temperature of the middle of the food. These will. So hopefully it'll get cold enough before it gets to the next step. If it starts doing vacuum freezing or anything like that before it's cold enough, they're likely to blow up. We'll watch it, see what happens. Other than that, we'll come back when they're ready to start the dry check. The ice cream sandwiches have been drying for about 25.5 hours, and they've been on the final dry for about 15 hours. When I came and checked it earlier today, it was already in extra dry time, and I just added a bunch more because I was working on other projects. Now we'll bypass the last of it, get them weighed, and then back in for the dry check. The thermometers have been about at this same temperature for the last 10 hours. So they're probably dry, but we don't bag probably, we double check it. With all the extra time I've given it, it's probably very dry by now. But I can see that some of them did balloon out or bubble out, but I can only see that happened to some of the chocolate ones. So I'll use the down arrow. And now it's in the process complete, and of course it says, gives you your options, and we are going to restart it, so we'll just leave it like that. Going to open the drain valve. There we go. So starting with tray 1. Yeah, and you can see that bubbled up and that bubbled up, some of them, but only the chocolate. Interesting. Oh, nope. there's one strawberry one. Okay. 1076. And all right, that's interesting. 1076. Interesting. Those two trays, and so this one I'm going to put up on the top. And this one I'll put down at the bottom. I want to check this real quick. I'm going to use the more sensitive scale, and I'm going to weigh these that are in the bag still. Okay, 33.3, 33.4, 33.6. Interesting. Okay. Now, 33.3. Now I'm going to check these that are still wrapped up. 34.5. I'm going to write it right here. 34.5. 33.8. So I'm writing it on the parchment underneath. That way I can, 33.8. That way if something changes with those specific ones, I can tell. All right, so those are going to go back in. So tray 3, 1100, and okay, I'm gonna close that for a minute. It says 1106. Now I want to double check a couple of these. Okay. 33.4. And the closed one, oops, I need that. Okay, so I don't know how well these have dried because they are still completely wrapped. I mean, they have holes, so we'll check it, and we know that this is 34.2 right now, and we can compare it. And this one is 33.4. So this one's lighter, but there is variations anyway. 32.5, 32.8. So you can see there's a variation anyway. I mean, it's pretty normal to have some variation. 32.2. Whoa, that completely came apart. Okay, so we'll put this back in, give it more time, see what happens. Let's get that restarted. I'm going to add more dry time. Close the drain valve, good plan. Continue. And for something like this, especially since some of them are still in wrappers, I want to give it extra time just to really be sure about it. So I'm going to give it 4 hours, and I can check it earlier if I get around to it. Anyway, I'll check it in 3 or 4 hours, and we'll see if anything loses weight. If they keep losing weight, I'll put them back in. And I'm most concerned about the ones that I left in wrappers. I don't normally leave any of them in wrappers, but I wanted to try it out. So we'll come back and check it later. I'm back. It's been running for however much more time that was. It's down to 42 minutes. We'll get them out and check them. The thermometers are still showing about the same, considering which shelf they're on. So that one is now down below 100, about 90, 95, and this one is about 115. So the temperature came up on this one, and that's what I would expect because these two shelves are almost always hotter than those two shelves. And of course, if you have the 5-shelf machine, it's probably the middle 3 are probably pretty similar, and the top and bottom will probably tend to be colder. So we'll go ahead and bypass the last of that. We'll get them out and check them. Okay, open the drain valve. And as soon as enough air comes in and equalize, we'll be able to open it. Okay, starting with tray 1. That's down another 2 grams, 3 hours. 2 grams is not very much, and it's probably in these whole ones. The ones that are cut are going to, because they have all that surface exposed, they're going to freeze dry quicker. A little bit of the strawberry on that blew up. A little bit of the chocolate, mostly chocolate. There's only a couple of strawberry ones that had a problem. I'm going to put it back in there for right now, and then we'll check it. Okay, that has not lost any weight. And we'll check these. Okay, no change. Okay, this one has no change. We're going to double check these others. Well, they might be ready to come out. 1100. I'm going to shut that off with no defrost. So we get these split up and put into bags. There's a little bit of the strawberry that kind of blew up, but mostly it's chocolate that had a problem. But not very much of it. So I'm guessing that I perhaps needed to freeze it a little bit longer. Not real sure, because they were really cold. I made sure that they were lower than -40 before I let it go to the next cycle. But some of the chocolate still had a problem. But almost all of the issue is the chocolate. Very, very little on the strawberry. So I think I'll kind of break those bubble parts off and not put them in the bags. And we'll clean that up a little bit. I don't think any of the vanilla flavor ones had an issue. Let's go ahead and break one of these open and check it. So that's what we have. The interior had melted that away. Still tastes good. Well, those are kind of a mess. So if I leave them whole again, I think I'm going to turn the temperature down a little bit so it's not going to 120 degrees. Maybe I'll just go to 100 degrees and see if that helps. Those are kind of hollow inside because the filling, the ice cream bubbled up and came out. So I won't send those. It might be the type of sweetener or something that does that with the vanilla or the strawberry and the chocolate. That's different than the vanilla. All right. So the vanilla ones do seem to break in half, lengthwise, you know, the thickness, but they don't balloon up or anything. So again, if I do them again, or next time I do them, I think I'll try a lower temperature. Okay, and then this one was completely wrapped. Let's see what this looks like in there. Wow, that looks completely different. Okay, I'm gonna break this one in half. I'm trying to break it carefully so I don't just shatter it. Okay. All right, so the one that was in the bag or left in the wrapper, I don't like that at all. Interesting. So I think it melts too much before it, so the sublimated water doesn't get out, and it probably raises the pressure and actually melts in there. That's not good. That's terrible. Okay, we won't be sending those anywhere. And that's probably true of these then too. Let's check them out. Okay, at least at that temperature, leaving them completely wrapped was a terrible idea, or a terrible results. It's not a bad idea, it's just a bad results. So you can see on the ones that I left completely wrapped, I got a terrible result. Whoa. Yeah, so it melted inside there before it dried. So I'll take all these that I wrapped, or left wrapped, and I'll use these for a milkshake. So at the temperatures that I did these at, the results of leaving them in the wrapper is terrible. I won't do that one again without doing something different. Maybe if I lower the temperature of the freezing or the drying a bunch, maybe that would work, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to just put all of this extra stuff in a Ziploc, and I'll just use this for some milkshake tomorrow. Where's that other one? There it is. Yeah, so leaving in the wrapper, bad results. These ones that blew up a lot, I think I'm not going to put those in there either, because that will be mostly hollow inside. Let's see if we can break that. We should have a knife. Yeah, it's just hollow inside. So if it blew up, I'm not going to try to bag that. The ones that were pieces did quite well, and the ones that were whole did pretty poorly. I'm going to check one of these whole vanilla, make sure they are okay. Okay. So the vanilla ones are fine inside, even the whole ones. And I'll have to use these right away because a bag like this won't keep the oxygen or moisture out. And I'm not even going to bother with an oxygen absorber. I'm just going to plan on using that in the next day or two, make some milkshake. So what did we learn? Don't leave them whole and wrapped, at least not in the conditions that I freeze dried these in. So I had it set for 120 degrees. I did make sure that it got totally frozen. They were all lower than -40. So they were nice and cold. Almost all the ones that were cut into pieces came out just fine. A couple of the chocolate still kind of puffed up, and it could be just where it was on the tray. It could be a little bit warmer. I don't really know. So we could do more experiment with them, or more experimenting with them next time. I'll probably do ice cream sandwiches again sometime. It's not really what I would consider freeze drying food. But number one son requested them, and so I'm doing them. I'm using 1 quart bags. These are 7 ml bags, and I've got my label printed and my batch number in felt pen also, in case the label fails. I can refer back to my notes and have all the information about that batch. These definitely break apart easily, but they also didn't blow up. So it's going to be pieces in there. Yeah, definitely. That's 4 ice cream sandwiches in that bag. And then we'll add an oxygen absorber and seal it. Parts is parts. So I'm going to do about 4 ice cream sandwiches in each bag. 1 sandwich, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, approximately 7 left. All right, I'm going to put that in my milkshake one because it's going to be basically hollow inside. And these I'll eat because they're basically delicious. Now we'll add oxygen absorbers and get them sealed. I'm using 300cc oxygen absorbers, even though that is a bit overkill for these. We use mostly 300s, that way we don't have to keep a lot of different ones in stock. And the 300 is good for this, and a 2-quart one. And there goes the sensor right away, going purple, or whatever color that is. So drop one in each one. Them sealed, or get them closed, and zippering them closed is not a substitute for heat sealing. And if there's any extra air, I can kind of push out any extra, kind of collapse it. But I'm not really worried about it because it's a 300cc oxygen absorber. This is a quart, which would be less than a liter. And so if it were a liter, it would have about 210 cc's of oxygen. And these oxygen absorbers have always done vastly more than they're rated for in our tests. I don't think we've had any do as low as double what they're rated for. So if these are rated for 300, I think they've always done at least 600 for us. I felt when I went to zip that, I had the oxygen absorber too high and it was in the zipper. And technically, the zipper really doesn't hold anything, so you wouldn't have to zipper this shut before you heat sealed it. I do it in part because it helps make sure everything's down there. The oxygen absorber isn't sticking up, and I like it. I'm going to seal it as high on the bag as I can. That way it gives me room to do it a couple more times if I mess up. And I can cut that end off, use part of it, and still have plenty of room for resealing it. And check it. Don't assume, even that print, don't assume that it actually sealed. Test it. And we test both of our machines on a fairly regular basis with a scrap piece to make sure that it actually is sealing. So after the light goes off, then I give it a couple more seconds to cool a little bit. Okay. Last thing I want to do is add a gross weight to each bag, so I know what the total weight is. Well, those are done. These are ready to ship off to number one son, and these I'll make a milkshake. So thanks for watching and following along, and let's go make a milkshake out of this, because we already have ice cream. All we need is a little ice and water, really, but I'll probably add ice and milk. So I did some calculations on this, and this works out to about 7 1/3 full ice cream sandwiches, even though it's a bunch of little parts. So I'll powder that up a bit in the blender, and then we'll add the liquid back in, and part of it will be ice, part of it will be cream and milk, and then whatever we need to get the consistency we want for milkshake. It needs approximately 500 grams of water or moisture back into it to get it to the same weight that it was. Because again, this is 7 of the ice cream sandwiches, and they would have been about 3.5 ounces a piece. So I'm going to try putting them in there dry and blending them to see if we can just kind of chop them up first and powder them before we add liquid. I think when I did it before, I think I added liquid first and it was a difficult thing to do. So let's try this out. Well, that powders very quickly, so I think this will work. We got the powder now. So powdered ice cream sandwich, which of course a lot of it's the sandwich cookie part, which I think is what makes these so good. So now, do we have a low speed? Yep, and then I'll add the cream and milk in first, and then we'll add some ice. Okay, see if this is cold enough to be like a milkshake. And the thickness is good. I wouldn't mind a little thicker. Oh, that's really good. But I think I'm going to add a bit more ice. Okay. Tastes a lot like a ice cream sandwich taste. All right, that is a great chocolate milkshake.